Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help people network and connect through their affinity groups, whether it be college alumni, it could be Greek fraternity and sorority alumni, it could be business alumni associations, or athletes. We've set this platform to make it easy for them to connect. This show, though, is meant to help people in the athletes in transitioning out of sports. It's a big issue today between mental health and financial literacy and other areas. And so what we do is we interview former athletes, collegiate and professionally, to talk about their journey and to kind of teach and inspire athletes that there is, in fact, life after sports. So today we have Orlando Arnold on with us. How you doing, Orlando?
And I'm good, Rob. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Orlando played baseball at Alabama State University. And then once he graduated, got into some different things. He was in radio and TV, kind of something I wanted to do as well. I always told my son I'd joke around and be like Joe Buck, and
Right.
they got into some different sales positions, worked at one point Major League Baseball. But now today, he is the president and CEO of Pyramid Sports Group. So he's living the life of kind of bringing it all together and being a sports agent.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I'm thankful for the journey. I'm thankful for the opportunity. You sometimes I tell people all the time, you don't know how you're going to get to where you're at. Like you mentioned, played college baseball. Then from that point, got my MBA. Still kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do and didn't know. Sometimes, you know where you're going to be at 23, 24. But then sometimes you don't, right? And I was one of those people that I didn't know as my path was unraveling to get to this point where I'm at now. And so, from there, then I began to do some volunteer work with Major League Baseball and the RBI program in the state of Alabama, directing that. And then as I slowly started to really get my groove in with the RBI program and just really helping kids go to college, in baseball and softball, I realized that I had a lot of colleagues that were in professional leagues. And then I realized what are the two things that I love the most, right? Because while I was doing that on the volunteer side, on the professional side, I worked in pharmaceutical sales. I worked in hospitality. I worked on contracts. I worked on client maintenance and relationship building and building geographies. And then it hit me like the two things you love the most is sales and sports. So what can you do next that can kind of merge those two loves for you? And it was simple, when that thought process, in addition to being able to educate and insulate and care for families and young men outside of just what money can they make for you, it was a no-brainer for me. So then from that point, did the research, figured out, thank goodness I had the education already, didn't have to take any more schooling, although I took 2 tests.
Yeah.
I had to, be certified in both players associations, which the NFLPA and the MLBPA for me. But it's been a blast, man. It's been a road, as an entrepreneur, running a company, but it's been a blessing and a blast.
Oh, that's great. So he basically gave us the 30,000-foot view of this podcast, how we're going to talk about this whole journey. So now we have it at the high level, so we're going to cover that as we go along.
Right.
So talk about playing sports growing up and how it shaped you leading up into college.
Well, you gotta, sometimes they say, you're a product of where you're from, right? I'm from Detroit. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Proud Detroiter. But then you look at the sports scene in Detroit, and now I know some of your listeners who may not be familiar with Detroit sports may think of the Lions losing or the Pistons being bad right now, right? Didn't even know we had a hockey team in the Red Wings, and the Tigers aren't that good. However, growing up, I was born in 1982. The Tigers won the World Series in '84. The Red Wings were good from as long as I can remember. You have Steve Eisman and the Russian Five. We're known as Hockey Town, USA. The Pistons won in '88, '89, and again in 2003, 4, right? Excuse me. You had that run there when Justin Verlander first got. A lot of people think Justin Verlander was just business good with the Houston Astros. He started with the Tigers in '06, his rookie season, when they went to the World Series. So I say all that to say that obviously I'm a diehard Michigan fan. Coach Izzo and the Michigan State basketball team were always good. Grew up under the Fab Five in Michigan. So you could not like sports growing up, in addition to having parents who were former athletes, mom and dad. And my dad really just ingrained me playing, 3 sports: basketball, baseball, football. Baseball just turned out real quick to be the best one. I didn't even get a chance to play tackle football because I was that good in baseball. And so, you let that breathe into you, you let that grow into you, and then you realize, like, I got a real shot. You playing varsity as a sophomore, you starting in a competitive environment back in the early mid 90s, and it's like, I got a real shot to do something here. And then you start getting college interest, and it's like, wait a minute, this is real. I
Yeah.
could play college, I could play Division 1, right? It just fueled me. But sports has always been a part of my life. I don't have a single memory where sports wasn't ingrained in something I did on a weekly, monthly, daily, yearly basis. From the time I had a memory, literally, upon graduation of high school, even until now.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure just, everybody talks about just that whole athlete skill set and kind of that building the practice and just everything that goes about being an athlete, the leadership and, the perseverance. So when you were growing up, this one's the fun question. Did you dream about being a professional athlete?
Oh yeah, yeah. If you go look at my senior memory book, I wrote in there that I would be an MLB player. Yeah, I know that I remember. That's what I thought I was gonna do. I wrote in there that I would be playing in Major League Baseball. It was no doubt in my mind. I didn't know how I was gonna get there. Right, I knew that I had to work hard. I had a opportunity that only 2% of my peers got, which was to play college athletics
Right.
and be a student athlete. So I knew that was a blessing and a rarity in itself, right? I'm a senior amongst all my peers, and all these guys with these football interests and these basketball interests, and I was one of the few that was going on to play Division 1 athletics, at Alabama State. And so I knew then that, like, yeah, this is what I wanted to do. And so I forged out to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I always joke around and say, hey, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player as well. Love baseball, but the talent wasn't there. So now I'm doing this for a living. So,
You're
so
doing good at it.
thanks. So let's talk about one thing we talk about with college and today with athletes and just the whole thing ultimately transition out of sports, whether it's college or professional sports. At Alabama State, did they do anything like as far as classes go to talk about and teach the athletes about the bigger picture of, here's different things you could do after sports?
Yeah, they did, but I think, and this is just not at Alabama State, and this is, but obviously I go around and I speak, I public speak across, different landscapes, especially to different student athletes. And I have peers that were in college around my time that were student athletes around me when we talked about life after sport, but I think back then working in sports wasn't this cool thing to do, right? I think back then, I graduated high school in the year 2000. I graduated college in 2005. Back then, working in sports was just, I'm gonna play professional sports or I'm gonna coach.
Right.
Right. The evolution of the world of having a real long-term career in sports for both young men and young women didn't really sort of evolve until maybe the last decade. And so there wasn't this huge need or this huge emphasis to consistently make sure your student athletes were aware of life after sport,
Right.
because it was kind of always understood that, here's what's next if you don't
Right.
make it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there was education around it,
Yeah.
resources for it. But I just think with the advent of this new culture and this new wave, there's more emphasis on talking about life after sport.
Right, which is great because I think part of it is, and even if you don't go into sports, I mean, there's so many, I've had different podcasts where we talk to former athletes that have gone on to be CEOs of major companies. So there's a lot of different avenues besides sports that athletes can go afterwards. But it's just kind of giving them more of an understanding. I think it's probably better today than when you went to school. When I went to school, I was a runner in high school and college, but I think it's there's a need for it because I know most athletes, and you probably agree with it, kind of you're zoned in. I mean, you're a baseball player and that's what you're doing, but we want to be able to hopefully open it up to other areas so that when they are done, they know that, okay, well, I'm not Orlando the baseball player, I'm Orlando the person that still has another 40, 50 years maybe of working, and I could go into a lot of different areas, sports or other areas too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like you said, you know, the education piece around it has just really, really, really um, impacted everything to a greater level. And I'm excited to see it. I'm always appreciative um, when people invite me to speak and talk about life after sports. People, obviously being a sports agent is kind of cool right now. Um,
Yeah, I'd like to be
you know,
one.
whether you're a young man or young woman, being a sports agent
Yeah.
is cool. It's inspiring. But people, there are other things you can do, right? You can be a vice president of marketing for a team. You can be a general counsel for a team. You can go to law school and still work in sports, right?
Right.
Um, you can be, uh, 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 you know, a data analytics. You can do a lot of different things, right? And I think now that this world, this sphere of sports is growing and is more robust than it's ever been. People understand that, like, if I don't make it playing, I still can enjoy sports
Yeah.
and intertwined in what I love.
Yeah, I like that. That's great because I mean, a lot of times the conversation goes about just like I said, like overall, like any kind of occupation. But true, like if you love sports, that's great that you can find different areas to get involved with. So, well, another area that we talk a lot about at Alumni Direct, obviously, it's alumni engagement. So I want to kind of hit you on a couple different areas of this. So
Okay, sure.
starting with, we'll talk about when you were at school and then maybe your experience today, maybe also experience as an agent. So talk about alumni involvement when you were at school. And I don't mean like the players coming back just for like the golf tournaments, but I mean, was there alumni engagement across the different sports where alumni were spending time with the athletes and talking about different things, other facets besides sports?
Yeah, especially I can think intimately. Baseball has an alumni weekend. Football does all their alumni activities around spring game. We had football week when I was in school. Well, a lot of the alums came back, had different initiatives, community service initiatives. It really wasn't sports focused until the actual game. Same thing for the men's and women's basketball team. Our track team, which is one I mean, almost probably 20 conference championships. They always are coming back and reaching out. So even back then, there was that connectivity piece um, to come back and give back and talk about things other than just the sport and just, hey, I saw you this. There was a pay it forward aspect to it.
That's great.
So yeah, it did exist. Now, was it as formalized? Not necessarily, but it was there and existed, and it uh, uh it was alive and well.
Now, how do you see it today? So, like, do they ever like does Alabama State try to get you to come out and talk to the athletes at all, or whether it's you or other athletes at alumni
Yeah,
athletes?
yeah, yeah. They do, and it's always a great opportunity in other schools as well. I think now more and more what you see institutions doing to educate their student athletes, because there's so much misinformation out there, right? It is so much of an opportunity that you can't connect with alumni at times now, um, because we live in this social media world. Social media is great, right? And I think that's kind of where we have to start meeting the athletes where they're at, in a sense, because when you get invited to speak, you kind of have to give that message, but you got to give it to where they're going to receive it,
Right.
right? And it's a little different. I enjoy it every time I go, but I always have to try to understand what a student athlete is thinking in those seats at this time in today's age and society. So maybe my answers aren't as long-winded, right? Because I am a long-winded talker. I know that about myself. But I also notice at times these student athletes, they're short and to the point, right? They are quick and concise. It's, ooh, look at what I'm doing on this social media platform or that social media platform. So a lot of times when I'm talking out, I'm educating, I use a lot of different visuals, excuse me, because it helps the message resonate a little bit better. You
Yeah.
just got to cater to your audience though.
Right, absolutely. So talk a little bit about, and I've had some conversation with other agents about this. Talk about the importance of networking and connecting when you're still playing.
Oh, it's paramount. It's essential. You don't know who you don't know. You also don't know who they know. And you don't know what somebody sees in you. You don't understand the gravitas of like you just going up shaking somebody's hand and presenting yourself, and and this alum may already have been watching you or admiring you from afar, and now they see another side of you. They could own a company and you don't know it,
Yeah.
right? Or they could know somebody who owns a company, or they could have a hiring authority. And so I think it's essential to always extend your tree, and extend your rope out as far as you can. If you have an opportunity to connect with, an athlete in the same sport at another school or your same school, um, or within a conference, or in different sports, brother and sister sports, right?
Yeah.
I would wholeheartedly do it in a heartbeat.
Right, right. That's great, and that's great advice because I mean that's part of what we're trying to do is foster that like within our communities, whether it's an athlete community where all athletes, like you just mentioned, across all sports, and not even necessarily the same school, or within that school's community center, but having that athletes corner where they can interact and other alumni can look at. But it's important, and I know I was talking to one of the agents, and this one kind of shocked me, but she had a former NFL player and he wanted to go back to his school to just offer his help mentorship. And they kind of like, not that they looked down on it, but they weren't so positive about it, which I think is a shame because everybody should have that opportunity. And if an athlete wants to come back for sure, why not take advantage of it?
No, that's no disagreement with that. No,
So
it's fair.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, and this is a hot topic, and I'm sure, yeah, and you're living it in your world. Let's talk a little about NIL, name, image, likeness.
How did I know you were about to say that next? I was going to say it for you. If you could have had a camera on me, I was drawing it on my knee on my leg here. When you said let's talk about a hot topic, I started doing this. I started drawing it. I knew you. Let's dive into the wonderful world of NIL. Let's go.
All right, let's do it because I know you're, as an agent, obviously that's something that you're looking for your collegiate athletes, and I know there's like now even with high school, but I guess give me your thoughts, positive and negatives of it.
I always like to do the negative before the positive.
Okay.
Negative is negative in NIL is if you're not educated, you could fall off a cliff as a student athlete. Um, if you go for money, you will always lose for money, right? And what I mean by that is if you're going to an institution because of an NIL deal, but you're not realizing like, what if you get hurt? What if the same reasons that you used to think about before NIL existed need to be the same things applied? Can you see yourself in for 3 to 4 years? What if there is a player that comes in that has a bigger NIL deal than you? Well, who's
Yeah.
going to play? The person that has the most money, right? Is your NIL deal a multi-year deal? Is it contingent upon you staying there, regardless if the coach is playing you or not? So those things you have to it's smart to protect the institution, but it's become so much more contractual now.
Right.
Which is why I do work with athletes on the NIL basis. I don't work with many. I like to work with few, just because NIL can have unrealistic terms and expectations. If you just, it's like when you get an agent, it's like I should be getting deals after deals after deals after deals. And I tell people all the time, there are guys in professional baseball, NBA, NFL who don't have a single endorsement. And now you think this same brand is going to pay you, the college kid, who is such social media driven. And so that's why I say education is key to positives.
Right.
people should have, I wish I could have got NIL when I was in college.
I was
Right?
going to ask that for sure.
Yeah, NIL is great. If you can make money off your name, your brand, think about it. I can remember I got all these college jerseys that I had growing up. I wasn't buying them because of the number. I was buying them because of the number of the player it was when I watched on TV. It's his name, image, and likeness, right? It's an opportunity for players to build their brand early. Now, there's a difference between an endorsement and your brand, right? You can get an endorsement and you can forget about that endorsement in 3 months. But actually building a brand is something that can be a lasting legacy.
Yeah.
And so that's the part I love about it, because you can build your brand early. And, they did a study that the reason why like football, American football, obviously, is the most popular sport. And it's because we fall in love with these guys for 3 years. Think about that. If you get drafted in baseball out of high school, you go to the minors, you get lost.
Right.
Right. If you fall in love with a guy in college, collegiate baseball, he goes to Omaha, wins the national title, you go to the minors and get lost. Not lost literally, but there's no marketability around that. The NBA, these one and dones, before you really get a chance to like the guy at your favorite university or your alma mater, he's gone.
Yeah.
The NFL is the only system, where you're watching this young man from his freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, or fifth year, senior year, and getting to know the person, knowing where they're from, knowing what they like. So by the time they leave, you're invested in them. And that trickles over to whatever professional market they go to. But from an NIL perspective, it's the same thing. You can build your brand. And so when now you can walk into a potentially NFL, and this is an NFL specific brand example, you have a whole brand around you. So what happens if your NFL career doesn't work? Well, you built up your brand for 6 years. Your brand can carry itself. You can go do philanthropic work. You can go back into the corporate workplace. You can do whatever you want. And so I think that's starting to trickle over to basketball and baseball as well. But those are some positives of it, just allowing you to build your brand. Some other positives, just kids can make money.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody doesn't have situations where they have money coming from home, searching opportunities. Every academic institution doesn't have the same level playing field when it comes to finances. And so if you have a collective, or if you have local brands that want to invest in the program, NIL is great. I think all in all, it's good for the sport. And as we continue to figure out the regulation piece and just continue to break down the rules, I think it's good. So it's definitely a net positive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest thing, I guess, like you brought up on the negative side, would be from an education standpoint, because we always talk about, especially from a financial literacy perspective, is that people don't realize, and I always say too, it's not just athletes, it's young people in general. But I heard a story recently where there was an athlete who got got an NIL deal for, I don't know, maybe $30,000, and they end up, the athlete and the friends and all, they kind of spent the money. But what happened was the athlete lost his scholarship because he made the NIL money and it was over a certain threshold. And so there's definitely, to your point, the need for education. But I agree. I mean, overall, it's great. I'm sure more and more there's going to be education and more monitoring it, through NCAA and other things as well.
Okay.
So let's talk about transitioning out of sports. So for you, talk about a little bit about, so when you were done with your college baseball career and you realized you weren't going to be playing in the major leagues or playing professionally, talk about kind of how you felt, and then kind of that journey that you began into ultimately where you are today.
Yeah, I hurt my shoulder my senior year. I was a pitcher. I hadn't swung a bat in 3 years due to me coming to college and being a pitcher exclusively. I knew once I hurt my shoulder and being a pitcher, and I didn't have the innings and the stats, I knew then. I started thinking big picture then, and so that's how I fell off into radio, TV, and I knew I wanted to get my MBA, just to propel me for opportunities that would exist, and so that's kind of how. That's I knew then, and right, and so then I started making the steps and preparing for what that would look like, and got my MBA, as I stated, jumped into sales, really worked on the territory development, contract side, the marketing aspect of the products and the brands, worked on the relationship building, customer relation, customer retention. And then I kind of went from in two industries, hospitality, kept moving up, wanted something a little higher level, got into pharmaceutical sales in that industry, which is a regulated industry in its own. And then I still had a love for sport, right? And so I still was involved in sports some kind of way, whether it was coaching, whether it was league directing. And then it just kind of hit me one day, like, what's next? Because I'm always thinking about what's next. Like, once I realized I'm not going to be here for 30 years, right? I'm like, all right, what's next? And it hit me like the two things you love the most are sales and sports, and you couple that with your ability to care for others and really see the good in people and want to do right by them and educate them. It makes sense to just move into this next realm. And so, the simple layman task of doing that is, resign, apply to take the test, in both PAs, players associations, take the test, pass the test. And then from there, just been building Pyramid Sports Group.
That's great. And like you said, you brought up a lot of people kind of dream of doing that. It's like to be a sports agent. So what would be like the best advice then? I mean, you kind of talked about your journey there, but the best advice you can give to athletes and in that transition out and looking at maybe, whether it's utilizing their skill set or whatever it might be.
The best advice is be real with yourself. That's the first piece of advice. Be honest, open and honest with yourself. It's not saying don't give up your dream. It's not saying, don't keep trying, but be open and honest with yourself about, if there's still opportunity for you to play, then great, keep playing. But have a plan B ready to go. Secondarily, while you're still playing in school, I would get a mentor. Doesn't have to be a mentor in the desired field, but just a mentor that can help you walk through life experiences, that can help you see things from a very, very, very high level, that because you haven't lived those experiences, you don't see it. And then the third thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions and pick up the phone and call anybody. That's a kind of the three takeaways I would give on that.
Yeah, and those are great. I'll tell you what, it seems like a common theme, but you're right. It's looking for that mentor, and I think all along the way, and that's something that people should definitely do. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to help, and it's just a matter of asking them for it. We all kind of have, or not all of us, but like you have for sure, the kind of that pay it forward mentality, which I have as well. So talk about now. So we've got that all. How can people find you if I'm whether it's I'm a parent that I'm looking for somebody for my athlete child, or whether it's the athlete themselves? How do they find Pyramid Sports Group?
First, if you want to find Pyramid Sports Group, you go to www.pyramidsportsgroup.com. Obviously, if we have a great team there. And if you want to, have an opportunity to connect with me, I'm always open. Like, I'm on LinkedIn, Orlando Arnold, MBA. I'm on Instagram at OA the Agent. So that's my initials of my name, Orlando Arnold, OA the Agent. Pyramid Sports Group is on Instagram. I'm myself and Pyramid Sports Group on Twitter. And so yeah, it's or you could email me, right? Orlando, my name, ORLANDO at pyramidsportsgroup.com. So that's me and Rob talk. I typed it wrong myself. So that's pyramidsportsgroup.com.
Yeah, and we'll put all that in the show notes. But I mean, this is great. I mean,
Yeah, those are the best ways to contact me. And typically, like, I never forget where I come from. I never forget I was that person asking the questions. I don't know. I'm not always able to help everyone, but I do typically have like probably a 99% response rate. You know what I mean? Like that, I'm going to respond.
Right.
I'm going to pick up. So if you reach out, I'll definitely get to you.
That's great. That's important too, and I commend you for doing that because in today's society, a lot of people get busy. They don't do that. So that's great that you do. You can find us at alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and follow the show. We're both on our Alumni Direct YouTube channel, Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey, and also on all podcast networks. But this has been great. We really appreciate your time, Orlando, and we definitely want to make an impact and help athletes as they transition out of sports.
Rob, it's been my pleasure. Anything I can continue to do to help you in your cause and what you're doing at Alumni Direct, always feel free to reach out. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.